Okay, so a huge welcome to you for coming and joining me for this Parenting Without the Fight webinar. I'm so glad to have you here. If this is your first time of connecting with me and you're new to who I am and what I do, I would love to just introduce myself. My name is Bea Marshall. I'm the founder of Yes Parenting. I have two boys, they're aged 10 and 12. And when I became a mum, I felt completely anchorless. And what ended up happening was I really grabbed hold of Super Nanny's principles. She was everywhere at the time, and she promised an awful lot of wonderful things, which after around, well, when my eldest son was 3, I wasn't experiencing. And actually I was not having a great time with him. We didn't have a good relationship. His behavior in my eyes at the time was dreadful. And when he was 3, I went through a massive turnaround in my parenting. And I talk about that a lot in the work that I do, in the Facebook groups that I run, and in the programs that I offer, and also my one-to-one coaching. So I'm very happy to share my personal parenting journey, but that's not what this webinar is about. Although I am going to be sharing some of my personal parenting stories. I'm absolutely not a perfect parent. I do seem to have a gift for understanding children, whether they are small children, older children, teenagers, young adults. And I also have a gift for working with other mums to help them transform their own relationship with their kids. But I'm not a perfect parent, and I have no expectation of ever being a perfect parent. And I have no expectation of raising perfect children. And I will always seek to be honest and real with you about what my own parenting journey is like. It's extraordinary, but it is not without its own hiccups and difficulties. So just before I get started, I would like to really encourage you to make sure that you have some water next to you, because one of our most important needs is to stay hydrated. And so many mums let me know, either in a kind of confession style or just they come straight out with it, that they really don't drink enough water. So if you haven't got water next to you, and you can take 30 seconds to go get yourself some water and bring it back, so that you can meet your need for hydration during this webinar. The other thing that I recommend that you have to hand is a paper and pen, or pencil. My preference is pencil, but paper and pen, because I'm going to share loads in the next few minutes, 30 minutes or so. And I'm really sharing things that you can put into practice today. And they will make a difference. So I would love for you to make sure you don't miss out on any of those. But because you've registered for this webinar, you will also receive a replay. So you'll be able to listen again if you want to. So I'm going to start with a story about when things go wrong with your children. And for me, this was with my youngest son. He's called Joss. He's coming up to turning 11. He is the most extraordinary teacher when it comes to me learning about parenting, and also when it comes to me learning about myself. And Joss is a wild, creative, fiery boy. He's extraordinary. I just celebrate him so much. I celebrate both my boys, but Joss, he just brings this incredible energy to the world. And what happens with that energy and with my energy is that sometimes we do this. And we had an experience between Christmas and New Year where I had some stuff happened, and I was upset by it. It was nothing to do with my kids at all. It was external to my kids. It was external to our family life. But it completely meant that my plans changed. I felt disappointed. I actually felt a bit lonely because of the result of what was happening with these plans changing. And I turned that upset and that loneliness onto Joss. And this is a really common thing that we do as parents. So suddenly, all of this hurting came out of me at Joss. And Joss got very upset, and I could not snap out of it. It was ugly. Like, I was shouting at him, I was being critical, and he was just kind of floundering, and he was crying. And then it got to the point where he said, "I'm sorry," and through sobs, "I'm sorry, I'm not the child you wanted." And at that moment, I snapped out of what was going on in me. And I was like, whoa. Because I grew up not feeling like I was a child my parents wanted. I also grew up not knowing if I was loved. Not because my parents are bad parents. My parents are amazing human beings. They raised 3 of us. I just happened to have that experience of their parenting. And they did the best with the resources they had available, and that is what we all do. So this is not about my parents at all. But all of that experience from my own childhood came up in that moment, and I was like, gosh, even my own son is feeling this. And so I reached out for support in different ways. And one of those was to talk to close friends and neighbours about what had happened. Because I've learned a long time ago that shame in parenting doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help you. It doesn't help your children. It doesn't help anybody. So I was happy to talk to people about what had happened. And what shocked me was that every single grown-up that I spoke to said, I remember feeling like I wasn't the child my parents wanted. And I realized that this was like the norm. And I just thought, this may be the norm, but I don't believe this is natural. I don't believe that this is how children should feel in relationship to their parents. I don't think any child should ever question whether they're wanted or not by their parents. And it really got me thinking, and I was so grateful to Joss and to my relationship with Joss that we have such deep connection and we always come back to each other. And this is the same with my other son as well, that he felt able to trust me enough to share that. And when I snapped out of the rage, I guess, that I was experiencing, and I was able to say sorry, and I was able to reconnect with him and talk to him about it, I learned so much. What I also learned from the grown-ups I spoke to is that not one of those ever tried to talk to their parents about it. It was something they lived with on their own. And I started thinking, this is a whole new layer to my understanding of yes parenting, and yes parenting is always evolving. So I wanted to bring this story out through a webinar and share it. And I wanted to share how to go about stepping away from the fight that is often in everyday parenting. And I'm going to share another story, and I'm going to refer to both stories throughout the rest of the webinar. The second story is also to do with Joss, and it happened just this week. And I really love this about how life works. You know, I'm here preparing a webinar on parenting without the fight, and Joss delivers to me a wonderful situation where I absolutely could have been part of a fight with him. We were out for a dog walk with my other son and a friend of mine, and unbeknownst to me, Joss had misunderstood something about the walk, and then when he was climbing over a stile on a wall, his stick broke. At the point where his stick broke, he just disengaged completely. He was yelling, he wanted to go home, he didn't want to go on the walk. And I'm going to share with you 3 tips that I put into practice in this situation with Joss, so that you have a practical understanding of it, that completely transformed that situation from how it would have unfolded if I didn't use these tips, and how it would have unfolded if it had been me in my 10-year-old's shoes trying to go through this process with my parents, and how it unfolds for loads and loads of families all over the place. So I'm in this situation, I'm being faced with a 10-year-old boy who is swearing, yelling, telling me he hates me, insisting that he wants to go home. And here is a baseline truth that for some people is tricky to get their heads around, but when you get your head around it, it's extraordinary. You will never be able to change your child's behavior. You will only ever be able to change your own behavior. Conventional parenting would have us believe that we can change our children's behavior, but the only way we can do that is using control and fear. And I am not willing to have control and fear be part of any of my relationships. Romantic relationships, platonic relationships, work relationships, my relationship with my children. I am not willing for control and fear to be part of those relationships. So without control and fear, you are never going to change your child's behavior. You can only change your own. So here is my first tip. And by the end of this webinar, you are going to have several tips that you can implement practically and immediately. Tip number 1 is how to diffuse any tantrum or fight. So in the woods with Joss is bringing his fight to me, and it would have been so easy to have gotten involved in that fight. But this is what I did instead. I focused on, I hear you, I love you. So with Joss in the woods, that meant, I hear that you are angry. I hear that you want to go home right now. I love you. And he would be like, I hate you. I just want to go home. I don't want to go on this effing walk. And I'm like, I hear you. You really don't want to be on this walk. You want to go home right now. And I was able to give him a choice. I said, you know, you can choose to come on the walk with us, or I can give you the car keys and you can wait in the car. But we're not going home right now. And he came back with his fight. And I responded with, I hear you. You're really angry with me. You want to go home right now. I love you. And I stayed in this space with him, feeling completely at peace with his fight going on in front of me. And I stayed in this place for probably 10 or 15 minutes. And then I was, because he's nearly 11, you know, he would have been fine to go back to the car. So I just said to him, you know, I'm going to go and join the others now. I hear that you don't want to do that, and that's fine. And I love you. And so I started walking back to the others. And by the time I joined them, he had decided that actually he did want to come and do the walk. And within about 5 or 10 minutes, he was completely engaged in the walk, having a wonderful time. And actually, he came up with these wonderful creative ways of using the camera on our phone and other things to do with the place we were that just added to the walk in the most incredible way. But I stayed with, I hear you, I love you. I didn't try and fix anything. I didn't try and defend anything. I didn't try and prove anything. I didn't try and change him in any way. I hear you, I love you. The second tip I want to share with you is that there are 2 secrets that might surprise you about the fights that you end up in. And the first one is that no matter what the fight is with your kids, if it's small children who refuse to put their shoes on or their coat on to go out of the door, if it's older children where the fight is to do with screens or food, if it's teenagers where the fight is around what time they come in on the evening or you know, letting you know where they are at all times or whatever it is, that fight, if you become part of it, is as much to do with you as it is to do with them. Any war, any fight always requires one person to attack and one person to defend. Now, my situation with Joss was attacking, and I was just here in a place of peace. I wasn't defending, I wasn't attacking, I was just here. So he could fight and attack all he wanted, and I was here. And what that meant there was no fight between us. There was, I hear you, I love you. But there was no fight between us. And a lot of people don't realize, in fact, I didn't realize until a few years ago, this concept that a fight only exists when somebody responds in defense. Attack is not the fight. It is defense that turns it into the fight. The other secret about these fights is that in every single fight you experience with your children, there is a gift. Always a gift. And that gift is an invitation to you to grow, to heal, and to transform. If we go back to the story I shared at the very beginning about what happened with Joss and I at Christmas, where he poured out with, I'm sorry, I'm not the child you want. The gift to me was to realize that I had carried that same thought, same feeling, same belief with me ever since I was tiny. And I went to my EFT supervisor. EFT is an emotional freedom technique. It's a way of working with energy, and it's one of the main ways that I work with my one-to-one clients. And I went to her and I told her about this, and we cleared all of the pain around that experience for me. And in clearing that, it then started to clear things for Joss as well. But that for me was such a gift from him, because it allowed me to grow and to heal and to transform in my own life. And that has already impacted my parenting. It has already impacted my relationship with both my sons. It has impacted how I show up and bring my work to my clients and to their families. So what he gave to me in the middle of that fight was the most precious gift ever. So although part of me would love to say, well, you know, even though I felt lonely and sad and disappointed about what had happened, and I took that out on my son, and I wish I hadn't, because I did take that out on my son, what I received was the most beautiful gift. And there is always a gift for you in any fight you experience with your children. And then here is my final tip. And this is one quick trick to change how you feel about any fight or tantrum with your child. And it is to ask yourself, is this more important than my child knowing I love them and that I want them? And this is not a question that many of us would ever have thought to have asked ourselves in the middle of a tantrum or a fight or a teenager yelling at us or whatever it is. But actually, when we stop, take a breath, and we ask ourselves, is this fight more important than my child knowing that I love them and that I want them? How do we then change our response to our child? Because whatever's going on in the middle of that fight, in the majority of situations, is actually not really very important. And I have observed this for myself. I have observed this with my clients. We add a lot of meaning to what's going on, because we want to win the fight. We want to get our child to do what we want them to do, or we're experiencing incredible frustration because it's not going the way that we want it to go for the way we planned our day. But actually, our child knowing that they are loved and they are wanted is so much more important than any fight. That doesn't mean to say we just become permissive, when it means that we find peaceful ways to manage the situation instead. Before we move on to the Q&A time, I want to share with you about my 6-week group coaching program that I've just relaunched. I relaunched it yesterday. It's called Parenting Without Punishment, and it is an incredible experience. So it's tried and tested. I've received feedback from the women who did it before. I have improved it and added to it as a result. Those mums that did it before have lifetime access to the content they've already received. They also remain in the Facebook group so that they will receive all of the additional new content that's going to be coming out in the Facebook group. And I would love to invite you into this experience. So I want to tell you a little bit about it now. And I'm going to, when I finish telling you about it, I'm going to write the link to the page where you can find out more in the chat so that you can follow that if it sounds interesting to you. So Parenting Without Punishment is a 6-week group coaching program. And here is a brief overview of what we look at in this program. We look at how punishment is affecting your relationship with your child, as well as your relationship with yourself. We look at what's really going on inside us when we end up fighting back, and how actually that all goes back to when we were kids. I help you with practical responses to common fights. So bedtimes, whining, food issues, irresponsibility with money, punctuality, rudeness, and so on. I'll also teach you how to expand time and space in that moment when you are about to just lose your shit with your kids. And we all have those moments. Well, I have actually met 1 or 2 parents that don't, but the majority of us have those moments where we are completely at the end of our tether. I'll show you how to let go of the guilt and shame that you have felt as a mum, when you've yelled at your child, when you've ended up smacking them, even though you said you would never smack your children, when your child has been crying on time out, or you've taken something away from them. There can be so much guilt and shame associated with mothering, and there doesn't need to be, and I want to help you be free of that. And I'm also going to help you to discover an abundance of practical, positive, playful solutions to your children's unwanted behaviour. Now, it's 6 weeks. It's 2 live calls during that time, plus the first 10 mums who sign up for Parenting Without Punishment are going to receive a free 60-minute call with me. Can you give me one moment, because my son has just come in, just a sec. Resume recording. So yeah, 2 live calls. Plus, for the first 10 mums who sign up, there's going to be a bonus 60-minute Q&A call with me for on-the-spot coaching and support within the program. There's an exclusive Facebook group with daily posts and daily support from me. It's also a wonderful place where you can share safely and without judgment what's going on for you and what you're working through on the program. 3 emails every week to lead you through each week's topic. And then there are also bonuses available. So the first bonus is the 60-minute free call with me. And then there's also the possibility of a 3 months membership of my subscription group. That's only available for another week. And then everybody will receive a copy of my ebook, which is called 7 Ways to Get Your Kids to Listen. So I'm really excited about this program. The results of this program are incredible. The mums who've gone through it say that they have learned how to handle their rage so much better. They feel confident, calm, open-minded. They have increased connection with their kids. They've learned how to play with their kids again. They now have what they need to find the solutions to their children's unwanted behaviour. Everything just feels easier and runs more smoothly, and they feel so much more confident. And I really want to offer that to you as well. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to write the web address for my Parenting Without Punishment program in the chat, and then I'm going to open up for Q&A, and we've got 30 minutes for questions and answers, and I would really love to help you with anything that's going on for you, parenting related, or if you have questions about the program or anything. So give me 1 second while I just write this web address in here. Let me just check I've done that correctly. bmarshall.com/parenting-without-punishment. Okay, so there is the link. So if you want to find out more about my 6-week group coaching program, click on the link, and there's loads of information there, and it's really easy for you to sign up. You can sign up straight away. There's 3 tiers available. So if you want to do the program just as it is, that's the silver level. The gold level also gives you 2 one-to-one coaching sessions with me during the program. And then the platinum level gives you 6 one-to-one sessions with me during the program. So that's an additional one-to-one coaching session each week while you go through the Parenting Without Punishment program. So I'm really excited, and we're starting on the 28th of February. So now for the Q&A, there's 2 ways to do this. If you want to type your question into the chat bar, then I can see it and I can answer it. The other option is using the menu on your screen. If you raise your hand, then I'll see that on the list, and I'll be able to unmute you, and I'll be able to unmute you, and you'll be able to ask your question. So I give you a moment to ask questions or raise your hands, and I'd love to help you. I'm just going to pour myself some water in the meantime. so far no one's got any questions. I mean, which is absolutely fine. So that's great. That means that obviously everything I shared so far makes sense. But if you would like me to help you with a specific challenge that you're facing with one of your children at the moment, or if there's an aspect of anything I shared today that doesn't make sense, or something you've read about yes parenting elsewhere that doesn't make sense, I am more than happy to answer any question, really. And I mean, it's a bit weird being silent on a webinar. If no one's got any questions, I mean, I can end the webinar early. It's absolutely fine. Or I could talk, you know, I can always talk about something else that's related to the webinar if you want me to. I can see all of your names. I'm waiting to see a hand, like a hand rise, or a chat message come in. No one's got anything. Yesterday we had 3 or 4 questions. One of them was about a 3-year-old who just wants to be naked all the time. And the mum was asking, like, you know, how do I get him dressed? Because he just wants to be naked. We've tried asking him, well, giving him options, asking him if he wants daddy to dress him, mummy to dress him. We've turned it into a game and things like that. So I talked about that. Also had, what was the other question? A question about how yes parenting responds in terms of safety. So, you know, safety is always a priority. Saying yes to your child's physical and emotional safety is absolutely essential. So, so I, you know, talked about that. And there was another question which has just gone completely out of my mind. I can't even remember which mum asked it. That would help me. I don't know. There we are. There was a 3rd question yesterday and I can't remember what it was. Okay, so no one looks like they have any questions for me today. So I just want to say thank you to you all for joining me. Oh, right. Wait there. Someone's message. Let's see what it says. Emily says, only just joined, so don't know what's been said. Main thing I'm struggling with, though, is sitting in the pram. Don't have a sling right now. And little girl is too slow to get to nursery, but she doesn't get that. Don't worry about the typos. I do such extraordinary typos that I actually have to have, when I send emails from my mobile phone, I have a specific signature underneath that says, please excuse the typos and have a laugh at any ridiculous things I write, because I just have said some awful things. Okay, so Emily, are you able to just let me know how old your little girl is? Just, I mean, you can just chat that, as in type it if you're able to. 26 months, so she's only just turned 2. Well, I personally would look at how can I make it possible to allow enough time for her to walk. I think that if she's wanting to walk, then I would look at how can I find a way to say yes to that, because the time and the energy that you're putting into trying to get her to be in her pushchair, and I have been there when my boys were little. I have forced them into car seats, forced them into pushchairs, and I remember the kind of like disconnection in myself that I felt when I was doing that. But at the time, that was kind of all I knew how to do. I didn't have a different way of thinking then. But with my yes parenting approach, I would start from basically like, how can I create enough time so that she can walk to nursery herself? It may be that after she's walked 200 meters, she does want to get in the buggy, in the pushchair, so then she can get in the pushchair. But that would be my first thought. My second thought would be whether she might like to have, you know, those, is it called a buggy board? Which I never actually had a buggy board, because I use slings and things, but a buggy board on the back of the pushchair, she might be more willing to stand and be pushed on the pushchair rather than sit and be strapped in. Oh, sorry, I've just seen you wake up at 6:30 and she doesn't want to wake up. She eats slowly, gets ready slowly, refuses everything. Then I need to get her in the pram and basically run to nursery. FML. I don't know what FML means. I'd have to wake up at 4. Okay, maybe we're not waking up at 4. So other thoughts from a yes parenting perspective is, does she have to go to nursery in the morning? Is it possible to change her nursery time to the afternoon? I mean, is she at nursery because you're working, for example, which might then be a limitation in itself? Or is it just that you set it up in the mornings because that seemed like that would be easier for you, but actually this stress of trying to get there on time and get her dressed and things just doesn't fit with her biological clock? One of my boys, my eldest son, he moves at a slower pace in life. He always has. He once said to me, I think he was about 4 or 5, and we were getting in the car, and he just said, "Mum, when you rush me, it makes me go slower. I am going as fast as I can already." And it was one of those moments where I was like, wow, okay. I grew up with a mum who rushed, you know, we had to hurry and rushing. It was all hurrying and rushing. And my eldest son, he's now 12 and a half, but he taught me from a really young age about creating space and time for him to be able to do things at the pace that he needs to do. So when I get up in the morning, I eat as soon as I can, pretty much, unless I go to the gym. But if I'm not going to the gym, I will eat as soon as I can. When my youngest son gets up, he will pretty much eat as soon as he can. But when my eldest son gets up, he needs about 20 to 30 minutes before he can even think about food. It's the same with like getting ready to head out somewhere. I can get ready really quickly. My youngest son can get ready pretty quickly. He gets distracted easily, so I have to kind of really be there reminding what to do next. My eldest son, completely on it, like a Jane Austen bonnet when it comes to getting ready. He knows what he needs to do. He doesn't need any reminders, but he needs time. And he now at 12 and a half, he'll work out the time himself. So I might say, you know, we need to leave at 12:30. What do you need to do to get ready? And so he'll say, well, yeah, I need to get dressed, need to do my teeth, things like that. And he'll say, you know, I think I need 20 minutes. Can you let me know when I have 20 minutes left? And then at that point, I say, yeah, it's fine. So then I'll let him know when it's 20 minutes, and he'll get on with doing what he needs to do. But he really taught me a lot about honouring the time that someone else needs in order to do what they need to do in their own life. And I think when it comes to, you know, children who want to walk or children who do things slowly, we have to find a yes to who they are as an individual. We can't, well, we can try to mold them into a different shape, but if the reality is that they just happen to take their time about things because that's who they are as an individual, then from a yes parenting perspective, I would choose to say yes to who they are as an individual and find ways to make it possible to be that. So going back to the nursery thing, if you were able to, I would explore afternoon sessions at nursery, or maybe later on in the morning, and then perhaps she could stay at nursery for lunch, and look at those options. Perhaps you could take food with you and have food at nursery before she goes in, and then a buggy board on the back of the buggy so that she can walk or go on the buggy or in the buggy, and she gets to choose that. Because at 26 months, what's happening is she's realizing her independence so much more, and you know, she's enjoying the fact that she can walk, and she's loving that. She's loving the fact that she can do that. It's exciting, and mum walks, and I want to walk with mum. So what she's doing is doing that wonderful process of childhood where she's becoming more independent. And, you know, there are times when those leaps in independence and development mean that we as grown-ups have to slow down to make space and time for it. So that's my those are my main thoughts on that issue around nursery. So you can let me know if that helps or if that opens up any more questions for you. Just see, has anybody else got any questions? Because we've still got time left if anyone else has anything. Okay. Oh, Emily's come back to me. Oh, look at that. I've got other messages that I haven't seen. Nicola has said that she always had a snack ready to give as she popped them in the buggy as a distraction. Hers both wanted to walk and time was a struggle, especially when the oldest started school. Yeah, I think distractions like that can be really helpful. I'm always nervous about distractions when our children are experiencing difficult emotions, because actually we want our children to develop a tolerance for discomfort. We want them to be able to experience these, especially when, it starts from really early on. But there's a lot of parenting is about shushing our children and, they're there and don't cry and stop making a fuss about nothing or calm down. There's a lot of trying to get children to disregard their really big, strong feelings. But actually, the more our children can develop a tolerance for that discomfort, the more resilience that they will have as they go on in life. So Emily says, I love letting her walk. It's just a time issue, plus all the frost and ice going down the hill. I know once we get our new sling, we'll be fine. But yes, that was a big help that you, little boy, just tells it as it is. Yes. Both my boys completely tell it how it is. They, and I think this is one of the amazing things that's come out of Yes Parenting for me is that my boys know who they are. They are very clear about who they are, and they are not, they won't let people try and get them to be anything that they're not. They're very considerate and they're very mindful of others. They're very welcoming and they're very inclusive. They are very adaptable and things like that. But yeah, they really know who they are and what they need and what they want, and they will be very clear with me about that. And that's a huge, to me, that's a huge kind of like piece of treasure when it comes to my relationship with my kids. And I know that it's because of Yes Parenting. So Emily says she does give her a snack, but sometimes she says no or screams. Emily, does she want to walk the whole way? Does she want to walk the whole way, or would you think she might walk a bit, get in the pram for a bit, walk a bit, get in for a bit? I'll just wait for you to type out your response. I do think that this age of 2, 3, my nephew, he's about to turn 3. And I think the age of 2 or 3, when children are, the world is opening up to them, what they're capable of is opening up to them. They recognize, like, actually, I like this, I don't like that, like I have choice. And that, that's a wonderful age for them. But the way that we've set our lives up in the Western world is often that they have to fit in with our plans, our timekeeping and things like that. And I think that that is where a lot of the tension comes from, because there's a mismatch between what we're wanting to get done and the time frame we're wanting to get it done in, and what they're wanting to do in the time frame they're wanting to work to. And so I think it can be a really challenging age. So Nicola chipped back in that she also tried to walk home as they had more time then. So kind of, I'm reading between the lines. I'm guessing that what you mean is that if they knew that they were able to walk home, then they might be more willing to get in the pushchair on the way. So, and then you're meeting their need. You're saying yes to their need to walk and their desire to walk later on. Emily says, she walks for 2 minutes, then makes me carry her in arms and still doesn't want to go in the pram. Okay, so she just really wants to be carried. Do you know how long until your sling arrives? It sounds like that's the that's going to be the biggest yes here, I guess, is having the sling. I wonder if there's a way to perhaps borrow a sling for the time being, or slinging libraries locally. There was quite a lot of sling libraries around. So, I see. You're waiting for it to be in stock. I wonder if a brilliant yes for the time being would be to see if any of your mum friends have a spare sling you could borrow, or if you have a local sling library that that can help you out there, because it sounds like that sling is the yes that your daughter needs. And what a lovely thing that she wants to be carried. I wore my babies, so my eldest is much lighter and smaller than my youngest. So I wore my eldest until he was 4.5, and my youngest by that point was 3. And at the time when my eldest hit 4.5 and just started to get a bit too heavy for me, my 3-year-old was also about the same weight. So at that age, I kind of stopped using the sling quite so much. And I remember just feeling the loss of it. It was like, that wonderful relationship that you have, and that the closeness that you have when you baby wear or toddler wear or child wear is wonderful. And actually Joss will still ask me for a jetpack. That's what we call a piggyback in our family, a jetpack, which is absolutely fantastic exercise for me, walking around with a very heavy big boy on my back. So I try and give him those as much as possible. But it's interesting that this instinct we have to be close and connected, and it's a really important need to say yes to. Nicola says that hers hated the buggy, but both came back to it on their own accord when they got a bit older. And I think that's the other thing, is knowing that our children, they will, very much like us, they will ebb and flow in terms of their preferences as they grow up, in the same that we ebb and flow in terms of our preferences, with the seasons or with time. And I think that I think that often what we say yes to subconsciously for ourselves, we don't always say yes to for our children. And I think that's a source of fight in our daily lives, is that, if we have a favourite mug, for example, we will wash up our favourite mug to have a cup of tea out of it if that's important to us in that moment. But when our child says, I don't want the blue cup, I want the red cup, something about that, often for most of us, is like, well, blue cup's fine. And the red cup just needs washing up, or it's upstairs, you just need to go and get it. But something happens where we feel that we need to teach our child to be okay with the blue cup instead of the red cup, when actually we can say, oh, let me go and sort that out for you. Takes, 12 seconds probably to wash a little red cup up and to dry it and to bring it back and to just transfer the drink from the blue cup to the red cup. And that 12 seconds of joy and peace and connection is so much more valuable than any of the fight that you're experiencing over, the blue cup, red cup preference, especially when you would probably quite happily wash your favourite mug up so that you could have a cup of tea out of it for a 5-minute break. Nicola also says she probably wore Roberta till 5. She misses it too. They both still love to be carried in my arms after years of wanting to walk. Yeah. And my boys and I, we joke. So my boys still, both of them, they leap up into my arms and they wrap their legs around me. We have these big hugs, and we've started talking about, how much more growth am I going to be strong enough to be able to do that with? And at what point will it switch over and I can leap into their arms? So they both know that I'm very excited about the day when I can leap into their arms for a hug. So there was something else that I was... I was going to share a story about when my boys were younger. I can't remember, again, maybe 6-ish, 5 and 6, something like that. And we'd gone into town, and we have a bookshop in town called Waterstones, and part of the Waterstones is a coffee shop. And so we'd been looking in the children's book area, and my boys had asked, they both wanted the same book, and they'd asked if I could buy this book, and I can't remember how much it was, but I don't know, maybe £4 or £5. And I had said no. And because in my head it was kind of like, well, we didn't come to buy a book. We don't need the book. You know, I kind of said no. And they were fine with it. And we went on and we went up to the coffee shop on the way out, and I ordered myself a coffee. And I remember my coffee came to about £3. And in that moment, I had this kind of aha moment of going, wow, I'm so willing to spend £3 on a coffee for myself, which will last all of about 15 or 20 minutes, and then it's gone. And yet I'm not willing to spend £2 or £3 extra on a book that both my children want, will last so much longer than 20 minutes, and will bring joy to all of us. And I've had so many moments like that in my parenting journey, where it's like a light has suddenly shone on the disparity between conventional parenting and what I now use as a yes parenting approach. And so after I got my coffee, I drank my coffee because I couldn't go back into the bookshop with it. But I said, you know what, let's go and get that book. And from then on, I really kind of thought about, you know, how I choose to spend my money and the things my boys request, because there's a real fear that if we say yes to our children's desires, that we'll spoil them. And yet we're very willing to say yes to our own desires without spoiling ourselves. And I think this whole concept of spoiling is far more to do with when we feel that we need to buy our children's peace or compliance or happiness or love. That's when spoiling comes into play. I don't think that you can spoil children by extending the same generosity to them that you extend to yourself. And in the same way that, you know, you don't prepare someone for a famine by starving them. You don't prepare a child for you know, the knocks that life might throw at them by throwing a few knocks in there yourself. Emily says, I often have reflective moments like that when I say no to something, and then I'm just like, why am I saying no to this request when I wouldn't say no to myself? And I always tell her how I changed my mind so she understands how to do that herself. Because I really struggle with being stubborn. Me too. Oh my God, yeah. So I like to verbalize my change rather than stubbornness. Yes. And I don't know about you, Emily, but I also have that stubbornness. And I know that for me, my stubbornness comes from being a strong-willed little girl who was said no to a lot. And, you know, I think my parents found my energy and my will and my spirit challenging. And the best way to deal with that was to kind of, you know, to manage my behavior into being kind of like a good little girl. But actually, what it meant was, I'm very stubborn. And my parents also, I only actually remember 2 or 3 times in the entirety of my childhood where they said sorry to me, that they'd made a mistake. And yet I will tell my boys regularly that, you know, I've made a mistake. I'm sorry. I got that wrong. I've changed my mind. And what I'm raising is 2 boys who don't have that stubbornness particularly. They accommodate, they will also change their mind. They're open to finding different solutions for a situation. Joss is a little bit more kind of digging his heels in. I think that's just his character. He's very clear about what he wants, and he can get a little bit stuck with that. But every time he digs his heels in and he gets stuck with it, again, it's a gift for me. It gives me an opportunity to respond to him peacefully, to love and accept him for who he is in that moment, and to find a way through in the right time for both of us. So I really welcome that in Joss. But I also do know that sometimes I can feel a little bit like, oh, for goodness sake, just but normally it stays inside of me. I will get to a point though with both my boys where I will just be like, I just can't find a yes right now, so if you guys can find the yes, I would really like to hear it. And then they'll say, oh, okay, what about da 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 da? what about this? What about that? And then I'm like, okay, and then we'll find a yes between us. But I do still have that moment of like, I can't find the yes. So, I think that there is an element of just the process of, you're living with human beings and who are not yet fully developed. You are living with people that, you've chosen to live with them in the sense that, you gave birth to them. But it's not like, if you live with your romantic partner, you and your romantic partner chose each other. You made a conscious decision to live together. But your children, didn't specifically choose to live with each other or to choose to live with you. You didn't particularly choose to live with those people. I mean, you wanted to have children, and these wonderful children came into your life. And however you understand it on a kind of a metaphysical, energetic level, where I completely believe that our children very much do choose to come to us. But actually, you're living in a household with people who might not necessarily choose to live together at another time of their life. And there are going to be times when you feel frustrated, and your children will feel frustrated, and you'll get cross with each other. But this is not about, and this brings us back to the beginning of the webinar, this is not about trying to change who our children are or to change their behavior. Like, without fear and control, we cannot change anybody else. But what we can do is we can change ourselves. So when our children come at us with the fight, we can just stand in a place of peace. Okay, so that doesn't bring any defense back to the attack. It just is peaceful. And so they can have their own fight going on, but we can just be present. Going back to my first tip in the webinar with I hear you. When it rains, you don't think, right, I've got to work out how to stop the rain. You go, oh, it's raining. I'll either stay in, or if I need to go out, I need to put a coat on and maybe take an umbrella. But you don't try and stop the rain, because it's a force of nature. Your child is a force of nature too. And yet we put a huge amount of time and energy into trying to manage their behavior rather than understanding what's going on behind their behavior, changing how we respond to their behavior and things like that. So Tracy says she's got to go. My pleasure, Tracy. Great to have you. Emily loves the rain example. Her daughter is definitely a force of nature. Yeah. All our children are. Some of them are very quiet and gentle forces of nature. That's Peep, my eldest son, the one who needs time to do things. He has this beautiful kind of, he's like a still lake or a meadow or something, whereas Joss is like a waterfall and a mountain. Like Joss has this big energy and it's crashing and it's, and Peep is just like this still lake. But there's an incredible power and force within that natural lake. And it is wonderful. It's a real privilege for me to raise such different human beings, and to begin to see how they reflect me and how they reflect their dad. Nicola says her daughter also. And Emily says that her daughter is an active volcano. Yeah. I was probably an active volcano until I understood how to make friends with my rage. And once I made friends with my rage, then that volcano became way more dormant. So, okay then, guys, it's been really wonderful to spend this time with you. I'm going to, as there's no more specific questions, I'm going to bring the webinar to a close now. I will be sending out a replay. So if you want to go back and listen to any of it again, you absolutely can. But thank you for joining me. It's been wonderful. I would love to invite you to join in with the Parenting Without Punishment program, and take a look at that. The link is further up in the chat. But I'll just tell you it again in case you didn't get a chance. It's www.bmarshall.com/parenting-without-punishment. And do reach out to me if you have any questions at all that come to you after this webinar. Do reach out to me and let me know. And I'll speak to you soon. Bye.